Go.
So since last week, lots kinds of changed. Like obviously we were unsuccessful in trying to find a flat land, which meant our whole plans had to change, which meant we came back here, and we tried to focus a lot on, fishing and stuff like that. So Dan, stepped up, sort of tried out different methods. We sort of went down to the stream. It sort of went the way that, in the back of my mind, I thought I knew it would go, which is it went unsuccessful. We didn't come out here with any sort of fishing equipment, nothing like that. None of us had really fished either, like properly, back in the UK. So I did think it was not going to be as successful, but it was nice to have that little bit of hope. But that's now gone.
It's worth trying, wasn't it? But yeah, we knew it was going to be very difficult because we didn't have experience. But yeah.
So that was one thing. But hunger hasn't massively affected our morale. It's affected energy, and I've seen a big change in Dan over the last few weeks. Like when we first come out here, I've seen Dan adapt to situations a lot more. Sort of in the first week, he was very sort of headstrong. This is how we wanted it to be done. Throwing out orders, sort of left, right, and centre. Thinking this is the film that he wanted to make. But as sort of time's gone on, the sort of surroundings and sort of energy, sort of the weather as well, has sort of made him adapt as well. I think in a good way, to know that actually, the film's going to turn out the way it is, and I don't come from a film background, so I've sort of relied quite heavily on Dan for that as well. But as time's gone on, we're both having input on, how we want certain things, what we want certain things to do. So, especially now, sort of definitely becoming sort of more equals, whereas most probably in week one I was leaning on him too much, and he thought himself as maybe a little bit more of a leader, but now it's leveled out pretty well, and he's lent on me, I think, especially for motivation and morale, seeing because obviously he's getting down to more skin and bones, so his level of energy is definitely a lot lower than mine, and sort of I've taken it upon myself to just do certain things which, going down collecting water, as simple as it is, does take a little bit of energy, because you've got to get up them steep hills, but it also gives me time to reflect, and I've had a lot of time to think out here, and what I want to do next, one being the next challenge, what do I want to do there, and sort of also, what do I want to do career-wise and going forward. So that's exciting for me in my head. But the one thing I still can't control is, one, the weather. It's become a lot more unpredictable since sort of last week. It was very predictable in the first week. Come 7 o'clock it would rain. It would go on for a few hours, but over the last week, it's some days it hasn't rained, some days it does, some days it's rained all day, and that I suppose is us getting more into the monsoon season, and sort of what we were trying to facilitate before we came out here was we were thinking that it would be raining all the time, but actually when we came out here it was a lot hotter than we anticipated. I still can't get scratching all the time, so I can't control bugs. But Wednesday last week I was almost ready to throw in the towel. My body had got really cold. I thought, what am I doing out here? What am I gaining from this? And actually, what I'm gaining from this is quite a lot, to be fair. One, more sense of character. But two, it's a story to tell, so I tried to plough through. We came up with different ways, it's about surviving, so we've used certain stuff that, okay, you might not have in a certain survival aspect, but we had brought them along, so we were going to use them in different ways. One being the bin bag at night. One, it's meant that I'm now keeping in body heat, but it's allowed Dan to use sort of it's almost like this material blanket, for him to use.
It's an emergency foil.
Emergency blanket.
Emergency foil
emergency foil blanket for him to use by himself, which has meant that actually we've both gained. You know, we're both keeping a little bit warmer. It's now getting to a stage where we might have to rethink that, because it's now getting to a stage where it's getting even colder. But you know, we are adapting, and I'm trying to count down the days, and you know, I'm working in percentages. You know, we're 75% of the way through this whole thing now. Got 25% to go, 5% every day. You know, we're nearly there. You know, and my stomach knows that. I know that. It's about counting down the hours. We're sort of running out of things, you know, to fill our day with, because we're not fishing. We didn't want to exhaust that energy. We've got a long trek ahead of us come Sunday, so it's about building ourselves up. We're going to smash a diet of bugs up until then. We're going to try and get a little fire going to boost morale. Maybe get some warm water in us as well. I think, you know, that will give our body a great boost. It's about just continuing the way we've been going, because you know it's been successful. You know, we haven't failed. You know, we haven't had to give up. You know, we've both shown great sense of character. You know, and I think we've got this. And you know, it'd be interesting to see once we finish this, where we can take on maybe next journey. You know, can we step it up a gear? Can we, you know, do stuff differently? And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so this whole kind of project's been very interesting. Kind of learned a lot of things out here so far. One of the main things as well is kind of find that balance between like risk and recklessness, essentially. Because you know, risk and recklessness are two completely different things. When we went out to kind of find the flat land, hopefully to find more creatures and next to the river, we were really kind of going from the level of risk over to the recklessness, because you know, we were going a route which we were unsure about. It was taking a long time. We were dehydrated. We were starved. We were like lack of energy. But I feel like out here now, we've got a nice balance between the two now. You know, having that water is great, but you know, in your life you've got to find a balance between risk and recklessness. But often, the thing with risk and recklessness is that they both sometimes offer big like rewards. There's big kind of, you know, kind of returns you can get on it, essentially, in terms of like what you learn and, you know, how you develop as a person. Kind of recently we've been spending more and more time in bed, I guess, or I say in bed, but we've been spending more and more time in a shelter, kind of going into there early, well, a lot of times because of rain, and then essentially getting out there a bit later in the morning. It's just because I think it kind of allows us to rest a bit more, because we don't really sleep the whole time, so it's a bit like very interrupted in terms of speed to get mate, I didn't put my audio on. So man, just keep recording. Okay, so out here you kind of learn so much, especially things about, or the notion about risk and recklessness. Like there are times when we've been very reckless in terms of when we were trying to find the more flat land, so heading a bit further up the river to find where the land was more flat, as kind of we were told by Google Maps and Google Earth before we even came out here, that it'd be more flat and open, which would hopefully bring the possibility of more creatures as well as being more remote. But you know, with like lack of water, lack of energy, we kind of were really kind of taking a massive risk, and that became very reckless. So I think coming back here at that point after a few days really changed that whole notion, and you know, the risk is a lot more measurable here, a lot more controlled. The thing about like risk and recklessness is that often it can bring big rewards to yourself and kind of pay you back in terms of the way you grow as a person and what you can achieve. So it's kind of always tempting to kind of go against that. Okay, so yeah, recently we do find ourselves kind of spending more time in the shelter, because this is partly because of the rain, but also because of our kind of low calorie diet at the moment. We don't have the kind of energy to be kind of moving around all day, and it kind of shortens our day as well. We spend less time out in the daylight, which means, you know, it's a shorter day and we get back to our shelter a bit early and we wake up a bit later and get out there a bit later. But because, you know, we're not eating too much food, we need to slow down our metabolism. And the best way to slow down your metabolism is to kind of stop moving. So lying down is probably one of the best things you can do in order to do that. Because at the end of the day, we do have potentially like a 4-hour trek out of here just to find people. And that's going to require a lot of energy. We've got a lot of gear to carry. We haven't got anybody carrying it for us, unfortunately. We don't have any kind of car planned or any way to get out other than walking. So it's going to be quite a big trek, and we need the energy for that. And that is, you know, that is our main thing at the moment. That's our main challenge that's going to be coming up, being able to make that trek. Personally, I found James to be a massive source of inspiration out here. He's got a lot of energy. You know, there's times when we both feel, at different times, we both feel low. There's times when we feel high. I feel like when I was moving, trying to go down a stream, I got a lot of high energy. And when I'm kind of not moving too much, and when I'm doing like the meticulous parts of this kind of whole project, just like changing SD cards, my motivation goes low. But definitely having 2 people out here definitely makes it a lot easier in terms of having that kind of motivation and kind of that drive to keep on going, because you keep each other going strong. And definitely he's a very strong character, and he's like, ultimately he's got a lot of positivity about him. He's never given up. He's never really shown really much any kind of weakness or anything like that. He's never really been down for too long. That's something which sometimes happens to me, especially when I've got really low energy, you know, with my body fat kind of dripping down, with my abs starting to come out, which hasn't happened in a long time, which I'm not a fan of. I prefer to have quite a bit of fat on me to give me a bit of energy. Yeah, James is always there, and he's, you know, strong the whole way through. And yeah, you know, he likes to sleep like we all do, but I like to sleep as well. So yeah, it's definitely great having him out here. Wouldn't want anyone else out here. One thing I do wish we knew out here was kind of knowledge of mushrooms. There are mushrooms in all places, but so many are poisonous that there's no point in risking eating any of them. If you had like a deep knowledge of mushrooms, we'd be able to have more food and to eat. You know, if we understood fungi a lot more, you know, there'd be kind of a bit more sustenance. But you know, that kind of happens. But you know, a lot of it's going to be poisonous anyway, so you know, we don't even touch it, we don't even get close to it, because it's not really worth it in the end. Coming up to these kind of late stages, we are kind of having to get ourselves a daily routine, because you know, we've proven that you can survive out here for like a decent period of time, but because we get into the later stages, we're kind of getting ready to go, you know, the end's in sight, and we kind of have to have a daily routine of getting things done, you know, getting water, getting ourselves clean, things like that. The routine will kind of keep us a bit more sane and kind of fill out our day a bit more, rather than just kind of sitting around and just kind of filming videos as much as we can. Done.
So at this point of the trip, I think this is day 14, and you can just kind of see just how slowly we're moving now. Every step is slow and deliberate, not to waste any energy. We just sort of make our final days in this jungle just as tolerable as possible. You know, we drink our water. You know, we try to get some new leaves. We actually found another area of the jungle nearby that has some big leaves, which got us excited, because you know, having those big leaves, we could put more on the floor, and we can get more done and like stick it, you know, to waterproof the area better. But yeah, again, you know, James is an absolute trooper. He is an absolute rock, an absolute legend in this, you know, keeping the positivity going.
So yet again in Malaysia, in this monsoon season, it's pouring down during the day for the thunderstorms. It's preventing us from doing anything other than stay and keep refuge inside the shelter. How do you find it?
We're not very dry, to be fair. It seems like all the stuff that we've got on the shelter sort of first week, that seems to have died. So we're sort of only down to one sort of level of leaves. and that's letting quite a lot of water into the
Yeah.
shelter, so we're getting very wet.
It's super wet, as you can see outside. We've had to put the night vision on just because it's getting dark outside, not because of the time of day, but because the clouds are just covering the sun. We've also had to bring in a lot of twigs and sticks that we were keeping dry outside, just so we can kind of keep them dry inside our shelter and hopefully use them to make fire when we get the opportunity.
And here we go, just another time lapse of us kind of repairing our shelter after it was, storming down in the middle of the day. You can see it's sub through. Most of our days are just kind of fixing shelter as we can. That's going to help us, not get as miserable for the next 12 or so hours.